to the Kent Lapp Podcast.
What's your take on the reason for the war, Confederate states, the Confederate flag? You know, of course, you have the one viewpoint, which is like, I feel like you hear this a little bit maybe more from, I think it depends on kind of where you're from, the state, a little or in the country, but
Yeah.
some would argue, hey, the Confederate flag's not the worst thing in the world anymore because it was about states' rights.
Yeah.
And others would say, yeah, that is the worst thing in the world. Don't ever show it again because it was about slavery.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts?
So the flag, the Confederate flag was a battle flag of the Army of Northern Virginia. So it wasn't the nation's flag. The nation's flag looked very different. If you could see, Andrew could pull it up. It looked more like the American flag. It was
the nation's flag.
The Confederate States
flag?
of America flag, their national flag, was not the St. Andrew's Stars and Bars cross that we know of as the Confederate flag.
That was a flag in North
Carolina. That was a battle flag. No, it was a flag of the Army of Northern Virginia, Lee's army. It was his battle flag, which became so infamous because really all the hopes of the Confederation was built upon that army. There's many armies that were in the Civil War, Confederate armies, but that army itself was that. So it became that. But so it's a battle flag, and then it was a square flag. It wasn't a rectangle flag with white borders. Yeah, you can see. So that's a late iteration. They had changed it later once that Stars and Bars flag became more prevalent. If you scroll up a little bit, Andrew, should show the other one. Yeah, see those are the first. That's the first. First flag of the Confederacy there, which was just the 7 states that seceded at first. And it looked. It was basically the American flag, but with all the other states subtracted. Right?
It really is.
Yeah, right. And then one other.
I mean, it's red, white, and blue, but there's just 7 stars, and there's 2 red bars and 1 white bar in between.
Exactly, and it's kind of like Texas flag, where Texas is the American flag, but minus 49 states. It's just the one Texas state. Really funny.
Interesting.
But and then later, but it was so hard to see the flags on the battlefield because they looked exactly the same. So they changed it eventually. But so that's the historical context. So. The flag was used when the Confederate flag became known as like synonymous with pro-segregation was during the Civil Rights Movement, and there's real things that happen with both are true. There's like this heritage narrative that's just there, and it just means like Southern pride, or it means like American rebelliousness. Like you'll see people. You can go into rural areas in Ohio and you'll see a Confederate flag, and they're like, "Well, Ohio was a Union state, but it's like this rebel thing." So there's that, but the things that really happened, the pictures of people like protesting the integrations of schools and them waving the flag, or the Ku Klux Klan using the flag, that is real. That really happened. So when people use the flag for not those reasons, right? Like we see people flying it, they need to realize that that's real. And so there's real experiences. And I think the Ku Klux Klan started using the flag after the centennial of the Civil War, when it became more in vogue. So I think if you look at like the Washington marches from the KKK, like in the 1915 or 1920, they were using American flags. I don't think you'll see a Confederate flag in that march. Which is very, very interesting.
That is interesting.
Now the American flag is not seen as a KKK thing, which is great. But they were using that too for a long time, and then they started using. I know there's a lot of cool stories where like you'll see like Southern veterans. A lot of like in the World War II, there's like Japanese forts that had been overtaken in the Pacific, and there's an American flag, and you see a Confederate flag flying over it. And Southern boys had gone up there and put their flags above things they captured, which is really funny. So that was all there, but it became known as that, and then the KKK started using it, and that's where it is now. So I think it just needs to become an historical thing. I know the fraternal organizations that used it early post-Reconstruction, like the United Sons of Confederate Veterans and the Daughters of Confederacy, they wanted historical control over it and said, don't fly it, only fly it in certain places that are sanctioned. And I think the reason why they did that is because they didn't want it to be bamboozled by like the KKK and stuff. Mm-hmm. So it happened, and that happened. So So that's already happened. So it's been put into that reality. So I think it needs to be something that's just historical and not something that anybody will just fly. But it's not going to stop because it's America and people want to do what they want to do. But
Yeah,
I don't know.
But now, so I'm not well versed in these things, but when I see someone like this past summer, kind of at the height of the tension, a lot of it was the racial tension, that was going on in this country. There was a guy on horseback riding through downtown Franklin with a Confederate flag, And so,
wow,
I don't know his motives. I don't know what he's about. But when I see something like that, I feel like, dude, come on, man. Like it was a white man,
right.
Of course, I guess. Right. And I just kind of feel like, and that guy hates black people, like that's sort of like, dude, or maybe he doesn't, but like, do you really need to do that? It feels like you're waving this flag in people's face. You're kind of throwing mud on people's face here. And it seems like you're probably not going to be, it seems like the assumption is, I guess, like there's some racial issues going on or maybe some prejudices.
Sure.
Is that accurate, or could that guy just be flying his flag because he's still into states' freedoms or something? You know what I mean? Like, is that a legitimate concern for someone who's walking around at the height of tensions that we had going on in summer with their Confederate flag? Or is it not? This has nothing to do with race for him at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder. It's hard. It's hard to know. I think like all the neo-Confederate stuff that has happened. Like I remember going to like this big store when I was in South Carolina, like coming from California, the first time I've ever been to the South, and like I was driving right outside of Greenville in upstate South Carolina, and there's this big like Dixie Republic or something, this giant place in the middle of nowhere. It was all Confederate stuff, and so I went in there, and it was just super interesting talking to those guys and stuff. But they had quotes on shirts that like from Robert E. Lee that were just completely not true at all, absolute lies. And I'm like a Civil War guy, and I like a lot of the Southern characters in the war, just like I like the Northern guys. So, so there was all the neo-Confederates. So a lot of it stuff is based on so much historical inaccuracy. But if you say that, right, if you say that it's true also on the other side. So the people that look at the war, like I remember a lot of people taking down monuments. They'll use like. In Knoxville, there was somebody using like war quotes from the mayor of Knoxville in the height of the Civil War, saying like, we're going to fight him till hell freezes over. And it's like, why are you posting war quotes like the war's still going on? Like that needs to be condemned just like neo-Confederate should be, because you're missing the whole point of the war. The whole point of the war is when you see in the 1910, when you see this reenactment of Pickett's charge at Gettysburg with the veterans that were actually in the charge, where in 1863, July 1863, they were marching in an open field as Union batteries were shooting canister shot, which is a charge of 70 big lead balls, like a cannonball shotgun, that they were shooting at the ground and having it bounce up into a wall of men that at one time, like 15 men or so would just disappear like that. And I think it was like 6,000 guys just marching an open field more than a mile, right? So that was happening. And then the same veterans came, and as they got to the cemetery ridge where the Union guys were, they hugged as brothers, and they had. They're now they're as friends, and that is something we need to take from the war. That narrative needs to be. I wish it was more prevalent, even though there's so many. All the other terrible narratives of war, like Lincoln, the hero we all needed, dying too early, and then Reconstruction happening, and Jim Crow ushering in and all that stuff. The terrible stuff that happened. There's all the great things that happened in the war, and how even like a lot of the runaway slaves that had meandered into Union camps, and all these guys from the Midwest not ever seeing a Black American ever, and them learning more about them and hearing how they talked and hearing what they believed, and they. That was this indirect way of where, when emancipation happened, the common soldier fighting for the Federal Army for preserving the Union, they became more in line of liberating these enslaved people. And it didn't come from the top down. It came from them seeing them like little by little, and them coming into the camp and wanting to be a part of this war. And then them making it as individual actors, making it about a war of emancipation, a war of liberation. And that's a beautiful thing, because it's Americans coming to meet one another and to learn more about each other, even if one of those Americans was considered not an American at that time.
So you're saying as black people were fleeing the South, coming to the North, joining the Union Army, the Union soldiers may have gotten into the war with a different sort of motive in mind, but as they got to know their black brothers in this war, then on the Union side, these individual soldiers kind of in their motivations in their, I guess, hearts, so to speak, now they're starting to fight for the cause of emancipation.
Yeah.
When all along they were fighting in the war, they were fighting to win their side of the war.
Sure.
It just wasn't so much for emancipation.
No, they
and as they got to know these black people, that it became more about that.
Yeah, exactly. I think majority of people that volunteer soldiers, they had volunteered for the adventure. Well, soldiers fought for a bunch of different reasons. And so the reasons that the elites started the war for were completely different from the reasons the normal, average, everyday person fought, right? A lot of them fought for money. This is the best job opportunity they could chop wood the rest of their life or be a corn farmer, and they could join the army and make a bunch of money. A lot of them joined for the adventure. A lot of recruiters used that idea. Oh, the adventure, going over the United States. Even nowadays, the army will do that. They have these really cool commercials in The Great Adventure, which some of that might be true, or it is true. And then, so that was true. And then some of them fought for defending their homeland and seeing that way, right? I think on both sides, but that southern side did that a lot too. But yeah, they because in the North there was like the minstrel shows, which was like making a mockery of like black Americans. There was a lot of minstrel shows in the North, so they've never encountered black slaves like they would have. They would have after, like they did after the war or during the war, even before emancipation. So there's a lot of, and they became, and then obviously that became even more apparent when they started making colored battalions. So like 180,000 black Americans fought for the Union Army, and so that was even more true. They saw them 180,000. Yeah, so they saw them fight even more, and seeing them fight, that was a big deal. So it unified the country in that way. At least mixing that the people group, 4 million slaves in the South, mixing with the North, and seeing that way. So,
what kind of shows did you say they were doing? The minstrel shows?
Minstrel shows, yeah, minstrel shows.
What is it? Minstrel
shows.
Minstrel?
Minstrel, yeah. So it was
like the menstrual thing.
Yeah, it was like a sideshow tent show where they would have these comical characters, and there weren't always. But it's the classic like racial stereotypes. So they have this like black face that was from minstrel shows, and they like the song Dixie, like I wish I was in Dixie. That was a minstrel tune. Oh, but wow. was played in minstrel shows. But it was wrote by a guy, I don't know where he was from, but he might have been from Ohio or Illinois, right? So he wrote that minstrel show, and then it became the anthem kind of the South. So that was a minstrel tune, and so there were like these little shows, and there'd be a bunch of funny characters that would, but some of that was making fun of like these funny, weird characters that were impersonating a black slave. So that was a minstrel show. So they had those in the North too. Yeah.